This week's episode will deal with race and privilege in America. There may be some triggers, I'm not sure yet, but if you are down for the ride, buckle your seatbelts.
The outline. With Kevin Dwayne. The outline. With Kevin Dwayne. This is the outline. With Kevin Dwayne. Kevin Dwayne. Kevin Dwayne. With Kevin Dwayne.
Yo, what's up? It's Kevin Dwayne. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, you can catch this show on Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, and KevinDwayne.com. Please rate, comment, and if you haven't already, subscribe. So, I am hijacking the show a little bit this week. I'm not really going to do any hot topics. I will say shout out to all of the Black nominees for the Oscars. I am too thrilled about that. It is amazing. I think this is the most we've ever seen in the categories. It's amazing, from Moonlight to Hidden Figures to Fences, to I Am Not Your Negro, 13th. Like, it is amazing. So I am super happy about that. It's an amazing time of the year. So I can't wait to actually watch them because this is great. But that's all I'm going to touch on because I feel like there's a more pressing thing that I would like to discuss. So, race, I believe, is something that we all deal with. Some of us more than others. Minorities certainly have to think about race more than white people because that comes along with privilege. You know, when life kind of goes your way, you don't really have to focus on things unless someone's really forcing you to do that. And I'll get to that much later. But the last few years, really, as I get older, especially, I have had so many conflicting feelings about race and relations and politics, and it's so frustrating because the shit is nuanced. It's nuanced. Like, and basically what that means is there's a gray area for most things. Things aren't black and white. And so when you're trying to navigate America, I mean, really the world, because race issues are everywhere. And I can't think of one place that black people can really go and be all right. Like, I feel like in most cases we're despised everywhere. But I digress. But America is what I'm going to focus on. It's nuanced. I mean, every situation is a one-off and just so much goes on. And I'm really trying to process some shit, especially with the latest president who's in office and just the climate we're in where there's so much blatant racism happening and a lot of people not respecting one another. And I think that's where the issues lie, because a lot of people won't respect others who don't look like them. And that's it. That is it. So I don't really know where to start but the beginning. I want to start when I was a child. As a kid, race was base level for me, as it should have been. I was a child. I'm talking like under the age of 5. You know, I just knew that there were people who looked different than me. You know, you had white people, you had black people, you had Mexican people, you had Asian people, and so on. You had different people, but it was very base level. My family taught me to respect everyone, but they also let me know that other cultures have different things that they do, but they never dug too deep. And I remember the first time I really got to experience the differences and race outside of the stereotypes that I would hear people of the community say, well, you know how whites are, you know how Mexicans are, you know how these people are. And it was all based on stereotypes and ignorance because no one really had friends outside of what they knew. And I feel that was one of the privileges for me being a millennial. I went to more integrated schools and I was able to get to experience different cultures in a sense, whereas the people before me, not so much. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But I remember the first time I really experienced the tension, I was about 5 years old, and that was with the Rodney King verdict. Rodney King was in a high-speed chase, and if you don't know the story, Google it. I mean, you should know it. But LAPD beat him up. Like, they whooped his ass. It was on videotape, and they got off. So there was a huge LA riot. I grew up in South Central, so I was in the center of it, in the eye of the goddamn riot. I remember being so afraid. There were fires going on literally around my house. Like some of my favorite markets growing up that my parents would go to burned down to the ground, and it was a very scary time. And I remember hearing people say, damn goddamn white people and these black people and this and these niggas and these honkies, and that was the first time I was just like, what the fuck is happening? But I was like 5 years old. I was just fearful, and it was just the first time I felt a divide. The next time I felt anything like that was the O.J. Simpson verdict. You know, that was another divide between black and white people and just America in general. But still, in my own world, things were fine because I had white friends in elementary school and I had Mexican friends. And, you know, you think to yourself, you're kids. And, you know, they always say racism is taught because we're naturally going to be social with one another, but we're taught to divide ourselves by our parents and stuff like that. So I honestly went through, I'll say, middle school without really feeling anything that felt off. And that's real because I went to integrated schools. It wasn't until I got to high school that I really started feeling the differences between me and people of other races, specifically white people. So for high school, I went to a predominantly white school. The school was mostly Dutch, and if you ever see a yearbook, you'll know what I mean. I show my friends, they're like, "Oh my God, this is crazy as fuck! Like, there's so many damn white people," and it's funny because I actually chose to go to that school. So another controversial issue with a lot of gay black men, a lot of us, especially on the West Coast versus the South, we deal with homophobia before we really deal with race stuff. Like real. Like growing up, I was more concerned about people messing with me because I was gay. And I was fearful of a lot of people who looked like me because they would pick on me because I was gay. So I remember my mother wanted me to go to Sarah. Shout out to Sean of White Tea Lifestyle, the podcast. Listen to that podcast if you haven't already. It's on iTunes. He went to Sarah, but we went to middle school together too. So shout out to him. But my mom wanted me to go to Sarah. I actually was afraid of Sarah. Sarah was a Catholic school, but it was pretty black from what I remember. I remember thinking like, okay, it was a all black, not all black, but it was a lot of black people went to that school. And I also know they were really big on athletics. And I wasn't an athletic kind of person. So I honestly was fearful of high school, number one, because I'm like, here I am, gay. And by this time, I'm accepting that I'm gay. I'm like, I am gay. Like, the feelings are there. Puberty had happened. I was like, listen, I'm gay. I don't want any trouble. I'd rather go to this white school because something tells me this won't be as bad. But that could have been my own, my own little ignorance or whatever, but I just didn't want to go because I just didn't want any trouble. My main fear was someone messing with me because of my sexuality. It was never actual race. So my mom actually, I don't think she even wanted me to go to the school because she was also on guard about that. Like, okay, Kevin, this is going to be a predominantly white school. I don't know that that's going to be what you think it is. But of course, I'm a kid and like a couple of my friends were going there. And it was weird because the year I went, we ushered in a bunch of black people into that school. Before we got there, it was like super white. And I remember there were about 20 of us from the school I went to that went to the school. So that was the first initial change. And now, from what I hear and what I've seen, it's a little more mixed than ever. But I mean, I graduated high school, what, 12 years ago? 12, almost 13 years ago. I graduated in 2004. But when we left, it was more black than it was when we got there. But I believe over the last decade or so, it's mixed a little bit more because someone kind of had to usher in the blackness, if you will. So it was quite an experience. I remember going there and meeting white kids who had very minimal experiences with people of color. So everything they thought they knew was based off of television, rap music, or whatever else, whatever sources they got that just had misinformation. So you meet these people who want to code switch when they see you. Yo, what's up, bro? What's good with you? And you're thinking to yourself, you don't have to do that. Just be who the fuck you are. Like, don't code switch for me. And you have people who are just like, so do you have like a gun or something? Or why do you guys wear do-rags? And it was a lot of that. And I was not woke by any means in high school. I was fucking 14, for God's sake, when I got there. I knew nothing. All I wanted to do was fit in and be good for the next 4 years. That's all I wanted. So looking back on a lot of shit, I'm like, wow, there were so many goddamn microaggressions that happened that shouldn't have happened, and opportunities to really teach people or try to school some motherfuckers that were missed because didn't know any better. However, there was some shit that went down that, we had to really will it in. There was use of the N-word with some people, not with me, but with other people in the schools. And just people making jokes about black girls and their hair. And when we did celebrate Black History Month, you heard the stupid shit of like, well, why don't we have a White History Month? During this time, FUBU was still very much in. Anytime someone wore FUBU, white people will be up in arms. That's racist. And how do you have clothing that only you can wear? If I wore something, it would be racist. It was a lot of that privilege shit. Or when you talk about slavery and you have someone saying, well, the Holocaust was worse than slavery, so get the fuck over it. Like shit like that. Tons of shit like that. And it just went on and on and on. I remember there was this one guy who thought black women were ugly. Like he flat out said, oh, ew, like, no, I don't like black girls. I mean, he liked Ashanti and he liked, Beyonce of Destiny's Child. That's when she was Destiny's Child. But they're celebrities. But as far as like black girls, oh no, I don't like black girls and their weaves and stuff. But, I like everyone else. He'll like Asian girls, Mexican girls, white girls. You think to yourself, and you don't think that's racist. And it's weird because you experience this now with people. They think because they have one black friend that somehow they're excused from being called racist because they don't understand what racism actually is. So for 4 years, certainly dealt with that. Certainly felt the difference of being from the hood, because I did live in the hood. Granted, my street was good, but I lived in South Central. It is what it is. And I was bussed out to the school. And so you felt the difference. First of all, these people were way more affluent. So a lot of these kids had cars at 15 and a half. They had their permits. They're driving their Honda Civics and their Mercedes or whatever. And, they look at you like, well, where's yours? Well, why isn't this happening for you? There was always these just microaggressions about grades and, oh, I didn't expect you to get grades like that. And just shit like that. And you felt the difference. And that's when I first started saying, okay, this is different. And I remember my mom would always say shit like, do you know like how black parents are when you get out of line or whatever? Like, oh, don't let your little white friends get you fucked up. Because there were, you meet people and you're in their environments and you see things differently. And there was, I admit, as a teenager, there was a level, I won't say of self-hate, but there was a level of, I guess, the white gaze that got on me and other people. I was still very much into black culture, like very much so. I wasn't perming my hair. I wasn't changing the way I dressed. I wasn't, changing my music. I still loved R&B. I still loved rap. But I do remember starting to be attracted to like white people and being into, it was an environmental thing. I remember really kind of feeling like, oh, well, I'm the cool black guy. And that was actually one of my screen names on AIM, which I'm so embarrassed by it now because, once again, a microaggression. My first few months of being in high school, I remember someone didn't even fucking learn my name. They're like, oh, that's the cool black guy. But when you think about that, oh, I just look back and just think, oh, I want to go back and fuck some people up, but I can't. But just the idea that black people just aren't cool. Oh, that's the cool black guy, but all these other people aren't cool. And so a lot of people try to other me in that sense. Like, oh, he's cool. He's cool. Like, he doesn't trip. He's not ghetto. He's not this. Unless, they wanted me to be for entertainment purposes. I didn't see that then. Once again, I was 14, 15, like, I didn't see that shit then. But now I'm like, God, Kevin, like, you should have fucked some shit up. Like, you really should have fucked some shit up, but I didn't. So a lot of it felt like some of their privilege was rubbing off on me in a sense. Like, oh, well, I'm accepting them on these people. But you know what? Looking back on a lot of experiences, though they were kind of putting on, their families weren't. I remember going to several things where I was the only fucking black person or one of few. And when I think about it now, those motherfuckers didn't want me in their house. I'm talking about like parents and shit and family members and stuff like that. Like, I may have had a white friend who was cool with me. Cool. But as far as like their extended families and shit, when I would go to their stuff, they didn't want me there. They didn't fucking want me there. Like, what? Why? No. Who's this fucking nigga? No, fuck that. So there was a lot of that. But it taught me a lot of, first of all, dealing with white people and people of other cultures, because being ignorant is only a bad thing when you're not trying to be schooled or you're not trying to learn anything. But some people are just ignorant because they just don't know. And a lot of people don't understand it because they've never fucking experienced it. So a lot of those white people, like, some people are willing to learn things like, oh, okay, once you explain it to them, they're like, oh, okay, I get that now. I never thought of it that way. Some of them didn't give a fuck. They're like, whatever. You're like, literally, there was a phrase that people used to say, if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much. Like, literally, they would say that shit. Or, they had their little clothing lines that were made by racist people. And so they would wear them as a symbol of like, oh, I'm not fucking with black people like that. And there was always like these underlying kind of microaggressions. But there were also people who were really cool as fuck. So in this, I certainly got blinded by, people who I thought were cool versus people who weren't. And it wasn't until after we graduated that I started seeing the differences of like, actually, these motherfuckers are actually racist as fuck, like really racist, like people that I was friends with. Like, not even the people who were kind of blatant with it, the people that I was friends with are like racist as fuck and privileged as fuck, and they can't see out of it. And I remember being in high school, and a lot of these people, like police officers, for instance, they're in their fucking families. They're in their families. That's their dads and their uncles and their cousins and their next door neighbors and shit. And so they think, oh, these people are nice. And you know what? They probably are fucking nice to them. They probably were nice and cool and at the barbecue and at church and being nice. But what they didn't know was these same police were coming into my fucking neighborhood in the hood, terrorizing people and beating them and killing them. But they don't see that, or they choose not to because that's their neighbor, and oh, that's John. He's more than that. And the thing about privilege is literally because something doesn't affect you, it obviously can't be a problem. And I started experiencing that when I got to college and when you get to like social networks and stuff like that. So, I got through college and I started, I worked at this karate studio. Um, I think I was a junior in college when I started working at the karate studio. And once again, lots of affluent white people. Lots of affluent white people. Now, because of my past experiences, it was nothing for me. I always was able, sadly, looking back, I was always able to be the token black guy. Didn't know any better still. When I tell you, I didn't get woke until I was like 26 and moved to the South. That's what I needed. But, I was always a token white guy. I had this name, Kevin Nelson is my government name. Kevin Nelson, they read my resume. I get there. It's like, oh, hey, how you doing? I'm code switching to whatever. You're hired. Cool. We trust him. You don't realize that. And I remember when I got hired at the karate studio, there was another black girl who was hired as well. And I'll say black woman. I want to be respectful. Black woman. We were the same age, but she got hired as well. And I remember there was a lot of tension between her and them. It was shared tension on both ends, but there was a lot there. And I couldn't help but notice, first of all, she was a black woman. And so there's also the male privilege there versus the woman privilege, but also she was of the darker skin, it was just, I remember it. So there was oh my God, I'm just trying to tell the story in a way that it makes sense, but they always felt like she had too much attitude, and there were times where she certainly served it to them when she felt like she was slighted, but there were times where they came for her. It was very much even. But I remember there were times where they would come to me, like Molly on fucking Insecure. They would come to me like, hey, so you think you can work with her and kind of talk to her about, possible things? And I look back like, oh my God, that's so fucked up. Like what? Because we're both black, I'm somehow going to, school her on how to be more pleasing to white people? Like, how does that work, And honestly, I didn't even try because truthfully, I was kind of scared of her. She didn't play. But she ended up leaving over time. But I do remember that I was treated differently from her. And during that time, I thought it was just because, like, oh, my experience with white people, that's all. I know how to fit in. I know how to deal with them. That's what it is. But in honesty, that was on some safety shit. They felt that I wasn't a fucking threat. I don't know what reasons, but maybe they thought, oh, he's light skinned or whatever. I don't know what the fuck they thought. But I felt safe to them and she didn't. And looking back on that, it was really, really fucked up. Like really, really, really fucked up. But she ended up leaving on her own merit. She was over it and she had her own thing going. So, and she's actually super fucking dope now. I still see her on social media and she's like doing the damn thing. But anyway, so that happened. So I remember meeting people there that I was just really, really, really cool with. Like, one of my coworkers, he was actually my manager. And it was great because every time he would move up, I would move up right behind him. And so we would have conversations about like race and stuff. And like, he was super cool, like super understanding, super liberal, never fucking flex his privilege in front of me, like ever. If anything, he would always speak to like recognizing shit that happens because he was white versus other people being black. He was super empathetic, super cool. So I got into the space where I was like, you know what? Like these conversations can happen, And it happened a lot among me and white people when I was on the West Coast. So it wasn't the most terrible thing. I remember there was a situation where some people were calling the school and they were playing on the phone and somebody called me a nigger or whatever. So, I reported it and told them and they handled it. Like they were like, you know what, we don't take this thing lightly. And they always kind of have my back. And I never felt like there was anything at play. Like when it came to like raisins and shit, I got them and I was able to manage my own store and shit like that. So all that to say, when I was on the West Coast, things were decent. Like they were decent as fuck, but I always kind of felt like I was balanced when it came to race relations because I felt like somehow I was acceptable among white people. And like literally it sounds so silly and I literally please like this was before. So but I didn't realize how much bullshit had to do with that. Like, you know, how much respectability politics I was playing. You know, how much I was doing to make myself that way. You know, I didn't, wasn't woke. So when I moved to the South, I was 26. And that was the first time I moved to a place where I still felt, not still felt, but I saw that segregation was still voluntarily happening among people. Granted, like my cousin, she's cool with everybody, so she had hella white friends, and so that was cool. Everything was balanced there. But there was other people I was kicking it with here who were just like, "Oh no, we don't go there. That's a white spot, and they don't fuck with us, and they don't do this." And I did notice that, especially in gay culture, a lot of clubs are still very much all black, all white, no in between. I mean, you have like Blake's, which we have a controversial thing with them. They put out this dress code, I think a couple years ago, that pretty much said no blacks. And without saying it, it was like, oh, no hoodies, no basketball caps, no tennis shoes, no chains, shit like that. And so there was a thing that turned a lot of people off. But for the most part, it's still the only place I can think of that is kind of balanced racially. Not balanced, I'm sorry. It's certainly not balanced. But you will see a few different cultures in there is what I'm saying. A few different ones, but not like in LA where you can literally go places and it's like even all the way around. And you feel that in the South. But also in the workforce, I notice a lot of privilege at play. People who aren't qualified getting jobs they shouldn't get and, things like that. And then the countless murders that have happened at the hands of cops over the last few years. Like a lot of things have happened, not just in the South, but over the US that have really switched my mindset when it comes to race relations. So all that to say is there are times where I get angry as fuck at white people. I get mad as hell at the privilege, at the blatant disrespect, at the ignorance, at the just everything about white people at times, because I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? And it's so easy to keep that anger when you're online because we curate our spaces. And so there are so many people that I have grown up with, people that I've gone to school with that have, in a sense, betrayed me, I felt like. People that supposedly love me but put in Blue Lives Matter on their Facebook pages or voting for Trump and voting against calling Black Lives Matter a terrorist group, even though I've explained to them what it means. There's been a lot of people I've had to cut out of my life, and that shit makes me mad and angry because you realize people are racist. They only look out for people of the same interests. They want people in power to look like them. And it's trash. So I get angry like the next person. I really do. But then something will happen where I'll encounter someone who I deem an ally. It happens all the time. There are people who literally are like, listen, I recognize my privilege. I recognize there's an issue here, and I want to do whatever I can to push progress. And my struggle, by all means, I'm not about to get in a fucking circle and sing Kumbaya with everyone. But I also think there are times where we do need to get together in solidarity to make things happen. Real talk. And I don't want to be cold to everybody. And that brings me to where I am at current. So a week and a half ago, my cousin asked me if I wanted to participate in the Atlanta March for women's rights and social justice. Not thinking about the shit, I was like, yes, abso-fucking-lutely, because I told, like, you guys know, I'm into fucking equal rights, social justice, all that shit. I'm into that. Absolutely. This is an opportunity to do this. So, this went on the entire, like, there were like, I think 7 states, but it was like worldwide where there were protests on Saturday. So it was a huge deal. So during that week, there were a bunch of think pieces that I saw, and a lot of them were written by Black people. Well, all of them were written by Black people, especially Black women who were like, no, fuck that. I'm not going to this protest. You won't use me as a mule. And, like one of them was explaining, like, listen, when we have a Black Lives Matter protest, where the fuck are y'all? When we have a Black women protest, where the fuck are y'all? Why is it that when issues affect white people, and only when they affect white people, is you want us to participate with y'all, but y'all don't want to participate with us? I have to admit, after reading this shit, it made me kind of feel a certain way about going to the protest. But I decided to research it a little bit more. And after kind of carefully like looking at it, I was like, you know what? I'm still going to participate, because I feel like it's still about social justice. It's still about women's rights. And there will be people of color there. And there were. I mean, I was going with my cousin who's a person of color. You know what I mean? So I was still going to move forward. John Lewis was going to speak. Arrested Development was going to perform. Like, listen, it's going to be a decent protest. I'm still gonna go. But there was a weird kind of conviction where I felt torn. Like, am I doing the right thing by going to this? And I decided that I was, because presence in numbers. And I choose to look at it this way. For me, it doesn't necessarily matter the intent of how you get to the change, in my opinion. Whether it was because, white people were affected and it happened. Okay, that may have been the case. But this change is going to happen for everybody. So, yes, it's going to be a bigger turnout. And it was a huge turnout of white people. But there were tons of white people. There were tons of Black people there. There were tons of Mexican people. There were tons of Asian people. It was just, everyone was there. But yes, it was a huge white population there, and it stuck out like a sore fucking thumb. And you do think to yourself, like, okay, this is the only way we can get shit to happen. But this is also what happens when you're dealing with the majority. You know what I mean? So it was interesting. So I went to the protest. It was actually a very rewarding experience. We got out there in the pouring fucking rain. It was a thunderstorm. We all had on raincoats, but there were so many great messages out there, great signs that included everybody. You had white people, Black people, Asian people holding up signs about Black Lives Matter and LGBT rights. And it was a great, peaceful ass protest. And I enjoyed it. I truly enjoyed it. I felt like I was a part of something. It was a great experience. So fast forward to when I get home, I posted this picture of, there was this white guy, and it struck my eye. He had a sign that said Black Lives Matter. So I posted it, and I did have a feeling that it would cause a conversation, but I didn't know where the conversation would go. I just knew, like, listen, this picture struck my eye, I'm going to post it. And I was right. So someone ended up kind of going in on the post, and I won't say they were necessarily attacking me, but just the way they came about it just felt super negative to me. It was very much like, so is this supposed to make Black people feel good because this white dude's holding a Black Lives Matter sign? Like, what the fuck? Who cares? Like, is this like some kind of, they're like, is this some kind of quasi validation of the white gaze? Like, how is this progressive? And so I was like, listen, I'm not about to have this conversation with you because it's been too good of a day. I don't think it's anything to scoff at. I mean, at the end of the day, this is how I look at it. Yes, it's a white dude holding a Black Lives Matter sign. It probably won't bring that much progress considering things, But I look at it like this. He didn't have to even put that sign together and bring it out there to that white ass protest. He didn't. And because the population was heavily white, it struck my eye. Like if you see the pictures on my Facebook and my Instagram, it's literally a sea of white people, and he's holding this Black Lives Matter sign. That struck out to me. And it felt powerful in a way, because it's like you're literally preaching to your fucking people. I am one of a few black people out here, but not as many as there are of you guys. And you have this sign. So it struck my eye like, okay, so there are some people out there who are legitimately allies. Furthermore, I talked to a few people while I was out there and had really great conversations about Black Lives Matter and women's rights and misogyny and understanding conversations. People who literally were trying to learn, giving their opinions in a respectful way, and people who I literally can say are fucking allies to us. But here's the issue. There are some black people who are like, fuck that. No. Like, I don't give a fuck. You're not an ally. Fuck you. You have privilege. If you're white, I don't want anything to deal with you. We'll have our own shit. Keep it separate. We don't need fucking white people to help us. I don't fucking want your validation. There's people who are just like, no. Fuck all of that. I'm not protesting with you. Fuck you. You know, and I get it because it comes from a place of hurt. I mean, we still deal with fucking the effects of fucking slavery and oppression and shit. So I get it. We all have different experiences with race. Hell, my experience was fucking different. So it's always this constant reconciliation for me inside of where do I want to be in the whole thing. Do I hate white people? No, I don't. Do I want to be in solidarity with them? Not all of them, no. But I do recognize an ally when one comes around. And I, speaking for myself, am not going to push away an ally. There are some cool ass people of other races out there who literally recognize their privilege and say, listen, I recognize this shit isn't right. And I actually stand with you. Not on no validation shit, but just to stand with you and help the fucking movement. I can't find it in my heart to push these people away. But you have people out there who are like, I do, fuck them, I'm good. And so that's one of those nuances that are hard for me to process, because it's like, damn, you damned if you do, you damned if you don't. You know what I mean? So there were a lot of people who got criticism. Black people got criticism for being out there in a protest, because some people feel like, well, if you can go to that protest, I better see you at Black Lives Matter. I better see you at the next all black fucking protest. I mean, and those are deemed more dangerous anyway. And it's not because we as black people are dangerous. It's because society says they are, because they're all black. You know, you have way more cops out there who are fucking with people and making things happen, so that shit happens, and I get it. And with me, I'm down for any cause. Like whether it's gay rights, whether it's women's rights, whether it's social justice, whether it's black rights, I'm down with it because I believe in equal rights of them all. So that's not an issue. But I know a lot of people face criticism for being out there in the women's protests, because we all have different experiences with race. You know, you have people who literally don't see other races as valued at all, of all races. You know what I mean? It's just like, there's that. And then you have people who've had interactions with different people like me. And it's always this constant this constant pull. Like, I literally get angry at some of the things that white people do. And it does cause me to have moments where I like legitimately don't want to deal with anybody white in that moment. But then people will pop up and show me that they are actually allies of mine. Like, I have white ally friends. So like I said, I'm processing this as I record it. So excuse if it's all over the place, there's that. I'm trying to work within the gray area is what I'm saying. I'm trying to figure it out, because I just hate this constant pull where on one end, I have a black person side eyeing me because I'm, you know, I guess, drinking the Kool-Aid or whatever of a white ally. But then I also don't want to be seen as racist myself, even though we know black people can't be racist. We can be prejudiced by the definition. We can be prejudiced. And I don't consider myself prejudiced either. Like, I'm not going to shun away an ally. It's the same with like straight people. I don't need a straight person to validate my sexuality. I don't need a white person to validate who I am as a black person. But if it comes down to solidarity, to getting the rights that we all deserve, I think it's worth considering working together. Because we're not going to accomplish anything behind our keyboards. We're not going to accomplish anything by locking ourselves in our rooms like children and saying, I'm not going to your protest. Fuck you, because you didn't come to mine. But it's a matter of getting the shit done. I look at it like this. Okay, so if the white fucking protest gets the most funding and the most turnout, okay, that's how that happened. But guess what? I will get to reap the benefits of some shit happening by being present. So I choose to be present, to raise the numbers up so that we can all get the fucking rights that we need. I think we should fucking take advantage of it. But that's my outlook on it. I choose not to be sour about the lack of participation and the only black stuff. I mean, I'm down with being there. I am. But I can't make other people do it. But when it comes to my own participation, I'm going to be out there regardless of who it's for, because that's what I feel is the right thing to do. Hell, I'll go out to an Asian rights thing. I'll go out to a Mexican rights thing. I think everyone should have equal fucking rights. And that's what it comes down to. That's just it. I choose to participate. Yes, I get angry as fuck. Yes, I get mad. I get frustrated on the daily, especially reading some of the racist shit that people say all day, every day. But I will not let that get in the way of me making a difference with my voice and who I am. I just can't do that. So instead of tweeting and Facebook and all that shit, I'd rather be out in the streets fighting for equal rights of everyone who is disenfranchised. And last weekend, that was women. All women. Yes, it was a heavy white women presence. Yes, there's no denying that. But it was still for all women. It just was. Because we can't put into law, oh, white women can do this, black women. We can't put that into law. When the rights come, it's for everyone, period. So I choose to use my presence to be present for all of it. And that's where I stand. But it was very frustrating being challenged by other black people for being out there and for participating, because it's like I'm trying to get this to progress too, and this is how I plan to do it. This is how I want to do it. But it's very nuanced. It's very, like, it's difficult. It really is. And yeah, so that's that. And another thing that I was really thinking about, especially over the weekend, was just the idea of privilege too. You have people like men who think about male privilege. A lot of men don't know what it's like to be a woman. Hell, most men don't know what it's like to be a woman because they're men. And once again, just because an issue doesn't affect them, it's not a problem. I mean, I'm not the one being catcalled on the street, so why should I care if a woman doesn't like being catcalled? But they don't realize the magnitude of it or how unsafe it feels for them and how that could be very intimidating to them. Or I remember talking to my cousin and some of her friends, and they were talking about how when they're out at night, when they leave from point A to point B to get to their car or whatever, the precautions they take, looking around and grabbing their keys and having some kind of like weapon or something just in case an attacker comes. Whereas when I'm out, I just walk to my motherfucking car and don't even think about shit like that. And that's a privilege of being a male. I don't always have to think about certain things that a woman would have to think about when it comes to predators and attackers and things like that. That is a fucking privilege. Just like straight privilege. Straight people have a lot of fucking privileges over gay people. I mean, gay people have privileges over like some trans people. And we don't realize this shit. Like, we really don't realize this shit. Hell, when it comes down to colorism, which is so fucking frustrating to me, colorism is one of those intra-racial things that goes on in the black community that just drives me crazy because we're all black, but we sometimes, like, because of the effects of slavery, we we deal with the whole light skin, dark skin thing. And it's very real. And I have darker skinned friends that I've seen shit happen to and I've seen be targeted while I'm sitting right there. And I always think to myself, like, damn, like, this is real. Like, they're being targeted because they're dark skinned. And that's fucked up. It's super fucked up. And it's also weird to think like that I have some kind of privilege because my skin is lighter. Like, it's frustrating. And I think it's also a white privilege to not be able to think about any of this, to literally live your life, go to any state, any country, any fucking where, and not feel any threat to yourself or anything. That's a fucking privilege that we minorities do not have, especially black people and Muslim people. We do not fucking have that privilege. And it's hard. But I think to an extent, everyone has some kind of privilege, no matter how small that happens. And it's just a matter of being aware of it and just realizing that. And that's what I saw over the weekend. It felt good to be a male out there with women, working in solidarity with them and saying, listen, I'm here for your rights. I'm here for you. I'm here to say, like, you shouldn't get grabbed by the pussy. You shouldn't, be catcalled. You should have ownership of your body because it's your fucking body. You shouldn't be slut shamed. You shouldn't be shamed at all. You are an equal fucking human. And it felt really good to be out there in solidarity. That was important. And, it's about recognizing privilege. It really is. I think more people need to do that. And we have to think about other people outside of ourselves because disliking someone just because they're different from you is just the dumbest thing ever. It really is. But we still have a long way to go on a lot of shit. And sadly, I don't think we'll ever get over it because there'll always be racist people. There'll always be sexist people. There'll always be xenophobic people. It'll always go on. But education's key. Respect is key. And being able to look outside yourself is key. And people just need to talk more. Like, just fucking talk more. And if people aren't down for you, fuck them. That's really what it is. Like, what I don't do, I don't have conversations with brick walls. If I feel like, like, especially with like some white people, there are some white people who are so concerned with being called racist that you can't even talk to them about anything because they put up this brick wall. Like, you can't even, like, my rule is this: until you acknowledge your own fucking privilege that was granted to you by birth, we can't talk. There's something to talk about because you haven't even hit step one. That's step fucking one. Recognize your fucking privilege. Once you do that, then we can talk about oppression. We can talk about systematic racism. We can talk about mass incarceration. We can talk about all the shit that was created to make minorities fail, especially black people. But until you acknowledge that there is a privilege that you have, we will get no fucking where. But that's not to say that once someone recognizes their privilege and they're willing to talk and be an ally, that I will shut them out, because I won't do that. And I know there are some people who are like, no, you should, but that's not where my heart is. I want progress. And I don't feel it happens in a vacuum. I don't. And yes, like I said before, we have so many experiences that differ from one another, and we have some traumatic experience at the hands of people who don't look like us. And I get that. I get not wanting to deal. I get that. And you don't have to if you don't want to. But I don't think we should certainly shut out other people who want to try a different approach. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm always trying to reconcile the two. That's what it comes down to. I'm just trying to figure out what's the best approach. And I don't think there is a best approach. It's race and privilege are so nuanced. I say it over and over again. They're so difficult. They're so complex because experiences are different. Experiences are complex. And we all look at things differently. I mean, think about black people who are self-haters. There's black people who don't like black people. And there's black people who believe in respectability politics and that you should behave a certain way to get respect from white people. And that's fucking trash because you should just respect us just because you should respect us. Fuck all that. I need to behave a certain way to be respected. That's bullshit. So you have black people who don't like other black people, like legitimately. I've met so many of them and it breaks my fucking heart because it's like, they really taught you to hate yourself. Like they really taught you that you aren't valued. So you look at everybody else who looks like you, like they aren't worthy of love because of the color of their skin. So there's that. So that's a whole experience. And then you have people who are super fucking pro-black and they're like, fuck everybody else. I don't want nothing to do with any other race except my own. And this is something that we're just divided on. And I accept that. We're so fucking divided. There's no one solution. There never will be one solution. So you just have to figure out what it is that you want to do. So as I said before, I'm here for the rights of all people. I love my black people. I am pro-black. I will never stop being pro-black. But if there are allies, I'm not going to push them away. I hope this week's podcast wasn't all over the place. I literally just kind of flew off the seat of my pants just to kind of put it together because this is what's been on my mind is just dealing with race. And I try to I don't know. I really don't know. But yeah. I just wanted to touch on it. So, if you have comments and shit, feel free to leave them on SoundCloud. Be respectful. Don't be an asshole to anybody. Don't be an asshole to me. That's just where I'm at with it. Yeah. So that's all for this week's show. Thank you so much for listening. I will talk to you guys next week with hopefully a lighter topic because this was kind of heavy. But yeah, have a great week. Peace out.